Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Stretch Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 9.9 AD carry tier list. So if you enjoy this, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's free, it's easy, just takes a couple of clicks. It really helps out a ton with visibility on the channel. I already have a support tier list, a jungle tier list, and in-depth patch notes for this patch as well, so be sure to check that out on the channel. And we have a lot of other content as well that you might like. So we have topical guides like best one trick, how to micro better, how to macro better, what is dodging, how can you use dodging to help you gain more LP? Does luck exist in League of Legends? All kinds of great videos there for you. And we stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I try to be as interactive and as friendly as possible, and we have a wonderful community. So come on out, join us for that. We'd love to have you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. So the overview for the AD carries hasn't changed that much. I don't think the meta has shifted a bunch. There are a couple of shakers and movers and shakers, I guess, that we'll talk about as we move down there, but there hasn't been a lot. The biggest thing is that this trend of Ardent supports being very strong is going up even more because they have nerfed Aftershock, which is still okay on the tank supports, on your Leonas, your Nautiluses, stuff like that. But the nerf is definitely a nerf, nevertheless. And they also changed the Scuttle timing, which means that Scuttle doesn't spawn until 3:10, so it's a lot less likely that you're going to get ganked early on, as more and more junglers are going to start trying to power farm their jungle a bit more. And as a result, especially of the Scuttle change, you might start seeing some more tank junglers showing back up in the meta. I still think there will be quite a few carry junglers, but we're probably going to see more Sejuanis. We might see some more Zacs, Rammus, just a lot of these champions that take a little while to get going. Maybe Vi is still really popular. A lot of these champions that take a little while to get going, rather than just trying to level 2 you all the time, like a Xin Zhao or a Kha'Zix. You'll still see the Jarvans who are going to try to gank you early. Hecarim usually waits a little bit before he ganks. So that slower pacing means that champions like enchanters aren't going to be under as much pressure in the early game. That's another thing too, is that some AD carries that aren't amazing at trying to contest Scuttle but are very good at lane pressure are going to be even stronger on this patch. So that is a couple of things to keep in mind there. There are still going to be a lot of engaged champs in the meta, so the Jarvans, the Hecarims, the Vis, the Sejuanis. Now, a lot of these are much more of a threat at level 6, so any champion that's going to have some kind of protection against that is going to be a little bit more valuable as well. And then magical footwear was nerfed on this patch. And one of the biggest changes I think that people might start adapting is going to be Ghost Poro. Now, I've talked about this and why it's so good on supports. And I have a whole video on that, in fact, so be sure to check it out on the channel. It's just like, why is Ghost Poro OP on this patch? Now, it's particularly good for supports because supports, of course, get a warding item, usually fairly early, between 10 to 12 minutes, and those last 3 wards that get to place off that warding item pretty much guarantees they're going to complete Ghost Poro by 15 minutes at the latest, usually. And what does that mean? Well, that means you get about 650 gold worth of adaptive force, which can be AP or AD. So I don't think that AD carries are going to stack it as fast, but I think that they'll still stack it fairly quickly, and that you should be able to get it by like 20 minutes on average. And if you think that a lot of AD carries used to take Gathering Storm all the time, if you remember that meta from last year, that was lasted for a really long time, where AD carries were always taking either Absolute Focus in Gathering Storm or Celerity in Gathering Storm because they wanted that scaling. They wanted a bit more insurance for the late game. Well, Ghost Poro offers that, but it's even better than that at under 30 minutes. So you get more incremental growth in terms of your overall AD in under that amount of time. And if you complete this at 20 minutes, then it's going to give you 30 AP, or the equivalency, which is 18 AD. And just by contrast, Gathering Storm used to give you 24 AP. So Gathering Storm was 20% less efficient at 20 minutes than Ghost Poro is. Now, Gathering Storm is going to be stronger at 30 minutes. Gathering Storm will give you 48 AP, or the equivalency in AD, at 30 minutes. But a lot of games aren't going too far beyond 30 minutes, so this isn't as strong in the mega late game, the 30+ than Gathering Storm, but it's way better earlier on. And particularly, if you can get this stacked up by 15 minutes, it's tremendous. So it's 650 gold value. And just think about it this way, like boots are worth 350 gold. And everybody was all over these boots on the last patch because you know, it's just gold in the bank at 10 minutes, right? This gave absolutely zero. It gave you nothing before 10 minutes. It just sat in your inventory. With Ghost Poro, if you place it properly early on, which I did talk about in the video, so for example, here, like if you're on red side, if you just place an early Ghost Poro ward like right here, then it's going to happen like at level 1 typically, so like right when the first wave is almost done, it's going to spawn. And if you pick it correctly, if you can guess whether your lane's going to be pushing or their lane's going to be pushing, and it spawns right on top of the support and the AD carry, then you automatically get 3 stacks, which is the equivalent of 6 AP at level 1, which is huge early on. Now, I don't know what the equivalency in AD is. It's probably 3 AD, something like that, 3 or 4 AD. But that's a really big deal. So it gives you a really strong power spike early on, and that's worth like 130 gold. At level 1, which there aren't many runes in the game that do that, but it also scales up to be worth 650 gold by around the 15-minute mark. So it's great early, it's great late, and that's just ignoring the fact that it gives you extra vision, that Ghost Poro, you can use it later on in the game to give you real vision, to extend your ward timer for about an extra minute or so, and that is going to help your support out a lot. It's going to help your old team out, because now you can use Ghost Poro at certain choke points, like right here, or you can use it, you know, here, and that'll let your support place, you know, deeper wards, like here or here, if you're trying to defend Baron, for example. So you can get a lot of extra vision out on the map. Now, it doesn't work with Blue Trinket, I don't think, so you may, you know, if you need to get the Blue Trinket on your team, maybe late game, it's not going to be as good. But here's the thing. It doesn't even matter. Like, once you stack your Ghost Poro all the way up, you know, 15 or 20 minutes, you can switch over to Blue Trinket. You'll still get the full gold value out of it. You'll still get the 18 AD out of it. And just by contrast, that's worth a little bit under double longsword. So it's a really meaningful amount of AD. So I think that Ghost Poro could potentially become the standard down there. Now, if a lot of people start running Ghost Poro and the enemy support gets smart about it and they get a sweeper really early, then they could potentially sweep out some of your Poro wards, and that would take you longer to stack. So you can put the Poro wards in different spots and work around this. So, for example, you know, you could like use your Ghost Poro ward to watch Dragon. It would still give you like a decent rate of return on that, or you could even put it in the river. Give you a decent rate of return. It won't stack as fast as if you're putting the Ghost Poro. Like, the best place is putting it just on the edge of this bush here, because they'll usually trigger it, and you need vision in that bush anyways. So that helps out a ton. But if they start coming in and sweeping it or using pinks or something in there, then it could slow you down a little bit. But you can still use it to defend Dragon. You can donate it up here, put it in the pixel bush to help watch for ganks. You could even put it over the Dragon pit, like right here. Or if you're on blue side, you know, you can put it up here to watch the blast plant. Or heck, you could even put it in their own tri bush, or you could put it on their blue buff to watch that. So you can get extra vision out of it, and it does incrementally give you more AD and AP. And if they aren't sweeping this, then every minute you can get 2 or 3 stacks off of it and get it stacked by 15 minutes, like I said, and get a huge edge. There are also several other good runes in that tree that people can take. So, for example, Taste of Blood is a really popular one. This thing is super strong. So early on, you know, you're going to be getting 20, and then it's 20% of your bonus AD. So this is going to be healing you for, at a minimum, you know, 20. So it's 1 health per 1 second, which is 5 health per 5, which is almost double the regen that you would normally get. So that's 60 health per minute. Then if you're in lane for 3 minutes, that's 180 health. That's a lot. It's like an extra potion worth of health, maybe even more than that. Early on, and it's really easy to trigger. It's any damage triggers this, so all you have to do is touch them with an ability and auto attack. Anything can trigger it. So this is going to give you a lot of healing. I would say it's going to be pretty close to Biscuit, depending on how often you use the Biscuit. Now, Biscuit does give you mana, so if you're on a mana intense champion like maybe Sivir or something like that, maybe you could still take Biscuits instead. But it's going to be very, very strong for the early game. There's some champions like Twitch that might like Sudden Impact over Taste of Blood, just because he can come out of stealth and it's going to give him that extra armor penetration, the lethality. So that could be useful. Then down here, several of these could be good too. The main one that got buffed on this patch is Relentless Hunter. So this would be very good for rotating around the map, just even getting back to lane so you don't miss as much CS. I mean, even 10 out of combat movement speed early on is a very big deal. That can go up to 55. So that really lets you roam around the map pretty efficiently. There's some AD carries that would really like Ulti Hunter. This just got buffed as well. 25% CDR is a very big deal. Some people are already taking this on Vayne back in a few patches ago, when some people were trying out like Halo Blade's Vayne, or they were just trying to go like Taste of Blood, Ultimate Hunter on Vayne, because her ultimate's such high impact. And people were doing it when it was only 15% at max stacks. Now it's 25. So this could be great on champions like Vayne, Varus, Ashe, people that really proactively want to use that ult to try to make plays. So that's really handy. And Genius Hunter probably not going to be used that much. Ravenous Hunter can be pretty good, though. That can give you a decent chunk of heal, specifically if you have a lot of wave clear ability. So I think Sivir's Ricochet might trigger this. Her Q definitely does, and then things like Twitch's Poison triggers it, Varus's Arrow triggers it. So especially if you get a couple of kills and get some bounty stacks, this could be a really good option. So I think there are a lot of really good things in this tree that you can use to adapt to different situations. If your support has a lot of slows, then Cheap Shot could be good. So if you have like a Janna support, and you're playing something that has kind of long range, like a Caitlyn or an Ashe, you might consider taking Cheap Shot, because whenever Janna lands that W, you can walk up for an auto attack and do that extra Cheap Shot damage. So remember, it doesn't have to be you that slows them. It can be anybody. So if your support has those slows that they're going to be spamming, if it's going to be like a Lulu with her Q or a Janna with her W, Cheap Shot could even be a decent option. Obviously, Cheap Shot on Ashe is going to be a pretty good option. But I think that there are a lot of good things going on there, and I think that Ghost Poro is going to be very strong. I haven't tried it on AD carry as much, but I know it's very strong on support. And just the fact that you can come to lane and very often get 4 or 6 adaptive force at level 1 by itself can be very good. So I think that there are a lot of options there. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the tier list, though, here. All right, so Jinx, still going to be number 1 AD carry, I think, by a considerable margin. She's just really good at everything. She has very long range early on, so that allows her to harass. She has really good wave clear, so you can push in fairly cheap wave clear, too. Compared to something like Sivir, she can push in really quickly, not quite as fast as Sivir if Sivir dumps all of her mana, but pretty dang fast, and it's going to cost a lot less mana than Sivir's stuff. And this scales so well later on in the game. I've talked about this in past videos. If you don't remember, if you're just joining the channel for the first time, welcome. But part of what makes her so strong is when she gets Rune and Hurricane, each one of these Fishbones rockets spawns off of Hurricane. So that means that each one of those bolts can do AoE as well. So basically, if you have an enemy that you're attacking that's standing in the middle of a minion wave, and you auto-attack them once with these Fishbones, they're going to get hit 3 times. So usually Hurricane bolts are only good if you're attacking, multiple targets, right? Because each bolt has to hit a different person. They can't all go hit the same person. But with Fishbones, they can potentially hit the same person. And if people are grouped up in a team fight, if you have 3 people grouped up in a team fight, she throws one of these Hurricane rockets in there, it's going to get 9 hits on an auto attack, because each one of those things, the main attack and each one of the bolts, does AoE. So it could potentially hit all 9 people. If they're all really grouped up, and it's like a 5-on-5 team fight, and there's 5 people grouped up, then you're going to get up to 15 hits in one auto attack, because each one of those 3 bolts is going to splash. It could potentially hit all 5 people. So you could get 15 attacks. 15. Now, those bolts are only they're like a little mini attack. They do 40% of your total AD, so it's not exactly like 15 normal attacks. But if it crits, by God, if it crits, and you're hitting everybody with those Fishbone rockets, it just completely deletes an entire team. So that's what makes her so strong, is that the rockets can crit. They get a modifier off of Infinity Edge as well, an extra 2.5% damage. And they also splash when they crit. So it gives her tremendous AoE, tremendous, just huge damage output in team fights. She gets a lot of movement speed and mobility off of this as well whenever she gets a kill or an assist. Interesting trick here with Alawi. If you have an Alawi on your team, you pull the Spirit out. If she kills the Spirit, then she triggers Get Excited. So you don't always have to play Alawi Jinx, but that is an interesting interaction that you can do with her. Although she can't take Klepto, so it's not quite as good as it is with someone like Draven, but it's decent. So she has that going on. She's very good wave clear, extremely high scaling off of Fishbones, very long range too, so fairly safe in team fights for that reason. Zap does quite a bit of burst damage. It's 160%, not bonus AD. That's total AD. So that includes your baseline. So, early on, if you have 80 base AD, this is going to be doing over 100 damage, right? It's going to be doing like 120, 130 damage. Level 1 for mana cost of 50. And it has 1450 range. This is a huge amount of range. So that's very, very good. If you can hit those zaps, it's tremendous. And it slows people for a pretty good chunk for 2 seconds as well. So zap is a really good trading tool in lane. Very handy. And then Flame Chompers is deceptively pretty decent as well. It has a long cooldown early on, but since people can't jump over this anymore, they changed that a long time ago, then it's pretty decent peel. And if you combine this with other CC, it's really strong. So like if your Nautilus engages on somebody, you drop Chompers on them immediately, and you're able to trigger that Chompers, then it's going to root them in place for a second and a half, which is pretty strong. So she has good CC follow-up. That's really annoying in team fights as well. If you drop that Chompers in there, it can create a lot of crowd control. And then, you know, Zap is a pretty decent peeling tool, good burst damage. And then she has her Super Mega Death Rocket, which is on a low cooldown, which is a very, very good long-range execute ability. So this is great for finishing people off, or even just in team fights. You know, you run in there, your Kennen ults everybody, your Amumu ults everybody, they're all taking a ton of damage. Just throw that Mega Death Rocket in there. It's either going to kill them or get them really low. So you can go in and get those cleanups. So that's a really good kit. And a thing about her is she does scale really well into the late game, but because of all these things, it makes her pretty good in the laning phase too. She's not nearly as weak as it may at first seem, because she's got the push, she's got the zap for the burst damage, she's got the chompers for the CC follow-up or the peel, the self-peel, and then she's got the death rocket to pick up some free kills early on. So I think that she's a really, really strong champion right now, and she does have the highest win rate overall. So kill pressure, or lane pressure, pretty good lane pressure. Like I said, she has these harassment tools. She can push in. She can use her Q. She's got the self-peel with the chompers. Kill threat's probably about average. It's decent. You can get kills, but it's not going to be as high a damage as some other champions out there like Draven. Safety, she is pretty unsafe. So that's kind of the biggest knock against her. She doesn't have any mobility if she doesn't trigger her passive, right? So that means that she can get dunked by Jarvan, and there's nothing she can do about that. In the early game, if she doesn't have her flash, it's really hard to get away from things like Hecarim, Nautilus, Leona. All of these hard engaged champs are going to be a problem. So you're going to have a support that's going to peel for you or help you out. Now, the good news is that Nautilus is very popular right now. Enchanters are really good too. But you do have Nautilus to help you out. Lulu is very, very good right now overall as a support, and Lulu's excellent with Jinx. You've got the protection of Polymorph. You've got the ultimate to help give you that little infusion of health. And if you do get ahead, then Lulu can put Whimsy on you, which is going to give you a ton of extra move speed and attack speed. So Lulu is definitely your best friend if you are a Jinx. Janna is also pretty good as well. Excellent peel, really good scaling. She puts that shield on you. Your rockets are going to hit like a truck, especially if they crit. So a couple of the most popular enchanters are really, really good on you right now. Now, champions like Soraka or Sona, it's going to be a little rougher. They can work, but they're not going to have much peel. They have a little bit, especially Sona does have her ult, but that can be a little bit riskier, but you can make it work. They both do have pretty good harassment in the laning phase, so it's likely you're going to at least win lane if you have one of them on your team. So she does need a little bit of help, but if you can stay alive, if you don't die, if you're not constantly getting dove, then she can do really well. Now, another good thing about it is people are going to be playing more peeler tanks in the jungle. You're still going to see a lot of your hard carries, you know, your Jarvans, your Hecarims, that type of stuff, but you might see some more Sejuanis or Ramesses, excuse me, things like that can frontline for you. So I think she's very, very good. I think we are shifting slowly back towards a more teamfight-oriented meta instead of the split and pick meta, and I think she's going to fit really well into that. So just runes, Lethal Tempo, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then I recommend Taste of Blood and Ghost Poro. Gives you that extra bit of sustain, gives you the extra 80 early with Ghost Poro. If you want to, you can still go for the Boots Biscuits. She doesn't need the mana as much early. It's nice, but Taste of Blood will probably be able to come close to matching Biscuits in terms of just HP. And then, you know, it's 12 minutes on Boots, which are a 350 gold value, or about 15 minutes on 18 AD with Ghost Poro. And it also gives you later vision, and that 18 AD is worth about 650 gold. So it's like, do you want to wait an extra 2 to 3 minutes to get double gold value? I think yes right now, but it's up to you. So the other option would be to still just go Boots and Biscuits. I think a lot of people are still going to be on that. I don't think as many pros are going to switch over to that right away. This is something that a lot of, no other commentator was really talking about Ghost Poro. So I think it's going to take a little while for people to figure this out. But, you know, the Boots and Biscuits are still going to be fine. Okay, so Jinx, very strong. Definitely try her out right now. Draven, I moved Draven up a little bit. He feels really, really strong. He has some great combinations in the laning phase right now. Since you're not going to be getting ganked as much early on because the Ghost Poro is going to be down, then that means you have even more time to harass and destroy people in lane. And so I think just his ability to just do so much tremendous damage early and bully out some of these champions that take a little while to scale, specifically things like Vayne and Twitch. He just completely annihilates them in lane. He's very good with these early enchanters that can apply a lot of pressure. So he doesn't like hyperscale as much as Jinx with someone like Lulu, but Lulu can put out a lot of damage and a lot of pressure early on too if she goes for the full damage build, right? If she goes for, you know, Spell Thieves, Absolute Focus, Scorch, Cheap Shot, something like that, then she can do a lot of damage in the early game. So I just think that he kind of doubles down on the early pressure. He basically forces the jungler to come down there most of the time, or you're going to completely annihilate them. He is good with all-in supports too, so like a Leona, a Nautilus. He's pretty much good with anybody. Anyone that wants to be aggressive and have a high impact in the lane. Now, specifically, he's really good with Alawi as well. So you don't always have to play Alawi with him, but especially if he goes Klepto Draven. I have an entire video about this if you want to check it out on the channel, but explaining this. But pretty much if you rip their spirit out with Alawi, with her E, and Draven gets the last hit, then he cashes in all of his stacks. So he gets a ton of bonus gold off of that, and if he takes Klepto, then he gets a lot of gold off of hitting Klepto on the spirits as well. So that just turbocharges his gold generation. He scales extremely well with bonus AD, so 105% bonus AD. So typically he'll go Bloodthirster and Infinity Edge after that, and he just straight up one-shots a lot of people with that build. So very, very strong. I think Ghost Poro would be amazing on him, and he can get either Taste of Blood or Ravenous Hunter. I'm not sure if his Q triggers Ravenous Hunter or not. It is damage coming from his Q, but I don't know. I'd have to check the interaction on that one. But Taste of Blood, you know, doubles down on allowing you to have more harassment in the laning phase. Then you're also you get the best of all worlds pretty much if you go for that build, where it's going to be Klepto, then Boots, so you get the free Boots anyways. Then you also get Biscuits, and you can take Time Warp Tonic to give you even more like just burst healing out of that. And then you can also take Taste of Blood and Ghost Poro. So with Ghost Poro combined with Magical Footwear, you're getting about 1,000 gold worth of free value. And then Klepto is going to give you about another, 400 or 500 gold value during the laning phase, and a lot of extra potions. And you get Biscuits. And you've got Time Warp Tonic. And if you ever cash in your Draven stacks, especially off of the spirits, then you're getting a lot of extra gold anyways. So Draven's like, from cashing in all the time, he's probably going to get another 500 gold throughout the game also. So he's basically gets a free 2,000 gold with this build, probably by 15 minutes. So it's just disgusting how far he gets ahead with this. And he pushes his lead so hard. A lot of people think Draven doesn't scale. That is entirely false. He has a hard time against tanks because he doesn't get a lot of attack speed, but he certainly hits squishy targets like a truck. And I mean, he can even do a pretty decent chunk to tanks if he has enough peel to buy him time. But yeah, this does a tremendous amount of damage early game. Scales really well with lifesteal. Now keep in mind that this cannot crit. This bonus damage here does not interact with crit at all. It gets the AD off of it. But this is why you often don't want to rush Infinity Edge. It's good to get Infinity Edge second because you need another heavy like AD item. But you want to go Lifesteal first because this does trigger Lifesteal, but it does not crit. So it's extremely oppressive with the Lifesteal. So that's why he's pretty much the only AD carry that's going to rush a Lifesteal item first. And he has other stuff about him. If you get really good on Draven, aside from generating a zillion gold and doing a ton of damage, he actually has some decent utility. Blood Rush is what allows him to trigger Klepto very often because it's so cheap. And it allows you just to go up for small trades. Even if you don't have an Alawi on your team, you can still go Klepto and do a decent amount with this. Gives him nice speed to try to dodge stuff too, to dodge skill shots, to get away from people ganking him. And Stand Aside is surprisingly like a really good peeling tool in this type of meta because it knocks away a lot of the diver champs. So if Jarvan's trying to flag and drag onto you, you can knock him away with Stand Aside. Hecarim's trying to run at you, you can knock him away. Now, both of those have unstoppable mechanics, right? You've got, Hecarim can ult through it, Jarvan can ult over the Stand Aside. So there's a little outplay potential depending on, how you time this. But it is very, very nice at stopping a lot of those hard engaged things. Zac, you can knock him out of the air with this. If Nautilus, hooks your support or Thresh hooks them or whatever, you can use Stand Aside to knock them out of that trying to come towards you, or a Mumu. If a Mumu hooks somebody on your team and you stand aside, you can knock him out of that. So if you're a really adept Draven player, you can make a lot of like really nice plays with stand aside. So that's handy. And then kind of like Jinx, you know, he has a fairly low cooldown ult that just gets you a lot of free kills to get the ball rolling as soon as you get to level 6. So I think Draven's going to be fantastic right now. Excellent bully, great scaling, great synergy with a lot of other champs out there that want to pressure the lane early. You're going to get a lot more alone time because, you know, once again, the scuttle's not coming up until later. So very, very good. So super heavy lane pressure, probably the heaviest lane pressure in the game. Kill threat extremely high as Draven, very unsafe. Scaling is very high. Now, not as high as something like a Twitch or a Jinx because his is single target. You know, he's not going to be wiping out entire teams, but it's still very nice scaling. And then his reliability is very low. He's one of the hardest AD carries to play because he doesn't have great escapes. He relies on you being very aggressive to leverage his kit, and you have to try to catch those axes while dodging skill shots, while last hitting, while trying to calculate whether or not you should be trading, you know, whether it's worth it or not, and paying attention to your mini-map to read the macro situation. So there's a lot of extra stuff going on with Draven, so it's a lot to process mentally and mechanically to make sure you're catching those axes and dodging skill shots. So I really like the Klepto build that I just mentioned. You can consider going a press the attack build if you want. That's going to give you higher burst damage but lower gold value in the long run. So I'd rather have the gold, the footwear, the biscuits. I want all of this. So like I said, this build right here is going to give you like almost guaranteed 2,000 gold by like 15 to 20 minutes into the game, and that's just like ridiculous. So yeah, PTA, if you're cashing in, if you're getting a lot of kills early on, yeah, it's probably worth it, but this build is pretty disgusting. So yeah, just Berserker Boots, and then Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, and then Rapid Fire Cannon. You could substitute Rapid Fire Cannon for Phantom Dancer if you need a bit more protection, if they have a super fed assassin. But overall, I think that build's going to be pretty good. What's up, dear?
My charger. Oh. Trying to hide it from me?
Yeah. Stashing it. So I think that I think he's super strong right now, but he's hard to play. So if you're good on him, this is a great time to break him out. Now, Sivir is someone that I bumped up a lot, and I know that like Jolty hates Sivir on the channel, and I know that I have trash talked Sivir before. But after playing against several Sivirs and just looking at these, just the stats on her, it's really hard to deny her power. I mean, she has a pretty high pick rate right now. It's not the highest in the world, but she has a really high win rate considering her pick rate is that high. There's really not another champion that has that kind of win rate that also has a high pick rate. Like, the closest you're going to get is Draven's getting pretty close. Jinx obviously is up there. Jinx is just really overpowered. But then Vayne is also, like, kind of getting close. But Sivir is a very unique AD carry. And I think that in this specific meta, she has a lot going for her. And I think that it's going to get better on this patch. So Sivir is the master of wave clear, and that's really important for several reasons. Number one, even if you're in a bad lane or a bad matchup, it's really hard for people to do anything to Sivir because she's going to push the wave in so much. It makes it very hard to engage on her because you're always going to be at a disadvantage minion-wise. And she has that spell shield, so it makes it very difficult to land anything on her. So to land hooks on her, to get any kind of hard engage on her, you know, she's going to be able to block, like, Sejuani stuff. She's going to be able to block Vi ults, which are very powerful, very popular right now. She can block Hecarim ults. She can block Nautilus ults. So there's just so many of, like, these CC, like, point-click, basically point-click ultimates that she's going to be able to block with that spell shield. And it can give her a lot of mana. Like, it's just really frustrating in a lot of matchups, even if you don't have a lot of all-ins. Like, whenever you're trying to trade with her, it's just really annoying. Like, you're trying to throw like a Sivir or like a Soraka Q to harass her. Well, sometimes it's tough because she's going to use that spell shield to get a lot of mana back. So it's like if you throw that at her, you're basically fueling her to push you in even more. So it's like, sweet, I got her spell shield. But then you're like, wait a minute, I can't do anything because I'm playing Soraka. I have no engage, and they keep pushing us into tower. So we can't really punish her for using that spell shield. So there are some instances where you can punish the spell shield early, but there's just a lot of matchups where it's just going to be giving her free mana. Either you have to never try to harass her at all and you give her a free lane, or you do try to harass her and you end up giving her a ton of mana so she can keep pushing you into tower. So it's very difficult to deal with that. And then she has quite a bit of safety with On the Hunt, you know, so she can push side lanes and get away later on. Or it's just difficult to dive her on the back line. You're just trying to get to her, and she's just running around so fast. I mean, this lasts for 8 seconds. Now, it does fall off a little bit over time. But it gives her a lot of extra attack speed as a steroid, and it speeds up her whole team. So if you got a bunch of meatballs on your team that just want to like dive and get to the back line, like Darius, who got super buffed on this patch, or even things like Hecarim, or just anything else that wants to engage, it's just got so much utility to it. You can run your whole team into their team. It's almost impossible for them to get away. You can run your whole team away. If you're in a bad situation, you're going to get caught. So you have like your Tryndamere split pushing a side lane, and they're trying to flank you with a Hecarim or something. You can run your team out of that situation. So it's got a lot of utility. It's on a low cooldown. It gives her attack speed. And it just makes it really difficult to deal with later on. It allows her to split push, too. She's one of the few AD carries that can safely split push because she pushes so fast and she can get herself away. So that gives her a lot of utility. And then she has awesome teamfight damage. Like, the damage on this in teamfights is ridiculous. There was one game where I didn't think she was doing that much. I thought it was some other people on my team last night doing it. She did like 70,000 damage in a game off of this. And the main reason for this is these bounces off of Ricochet can reach the back line. So she has backline access even when she's hitting the front line. So she can throw all of this stuff on the tank, but while she's killing the tank, it's also bouncing around and hitting everybody else in the fight. So you're not just wasting all of your damage on the tank. I mean, look at these bounces. So total bounce damage, when you get this maxed out, which I think you max this either first or second on Sivir. I haven't played Sivir in a long time. But it's 210% of your total AD that can crit if it balances on everybody. So it just does a tremendous amount of damage in team fights. And then the Boomerang Blade similarly goes through everybody. So she just does so much AoE in fights. It's just bouncing around constantly. So we're moving back into more of a team fight meta. As I mentioned before, you're starting to see some more tanks creep back into the meta. And that's what she excels at. She excels at just throwing a bunch of boomerangs at the tanks and just having it bounce around and kill the whole team. So it's kind of like Jinx in that respect, where she can completely shred grouped up team fights, but they don't even have to be as grouped up as they do with Jinx. And it just bounces around and does a similar amount of damage that Jinx does in fights. Except she has this added utility. The thing is, like, she doesn't have, I don't know. I mean, she doesn't have the same kind of range that Jinx does. So if her spell shield is down, it is a bit more dangerous for her to do that. She doesn't get those free picks with her Super Mega Death Rocket. She doesn't have Zap. So her range is a little bit shorter. Her effective, like, trading range is a bit shorter than Jinx's is. And she takes towers and dragons a little bit slower than Jinx. Jinx does take those really quickly, which I forgot to mention that. Her Gatling gun just completely shreds towers, barons, all of that stuff. Super fast. But yeah, I mean, this just makes her really good. If you have a bad matchup, whatever, just push them in a tower. They can't do anything. If you have a good matchup, you can potentially zone them, or you can harass them under tower. So a lot of these champions, a lot of these enchanters that are coming up right now, like, they have pretty good harass under tower, right? You think about Lulu. Lulu can harass under tower. Sona, Nami. You know, you just want to get them pushed in and then just harass them while they're trying to last hit. So if the jungler doesn't come down here, you're just going to eventually just win the lane, because they're always going to be in their tower. You get free harass on them. They're eventually going to have to back. And when they do, you're going to get tower plates, or maybe even get the first tower. So she just kind of forces the jungler to come down a lot of the time. And if they do, you're probably still going to get away if you're level 6. So I think that makes her really strong. Now, yeah, she does take a couple more items than a lot of other champs, right? And it can be kind of hard to last hit early on with these ricochets. It can make, like, your timing on CS kind of weird. You have to get used to it, because you are going to miss a lot of CS that are just going to, like, live, you know, with 5 health off your ricochets, and then your minions are going to kill them. So that can be a little awkward until you get a ton of AD. But if you go Essence Reaver early, I think Essence Reaver into either Infinity Edge, like, you get Essence Reaver and Infinity Edge early, and then some other Zeal item is usually sandwiched between there. A lot of people go Phantom Dancer. You could double down and go Static Shiv if you want super fast pushing. But I think that's kind of the new technology, is a lot of people are going away from these double Zeal items, which I've been telling people to do for a really long time. And they are going towards, I guess more people are going Infinity than Essence, Phantom Dancer than Essence. I like going Essence earlier just because it gives you way more pushing power. This is what a lot of pros are doing as well. You're going Essence early because it just gives you so much extra pressure around. Some people are going Infinity Edge. Infinity Edge hurts more than Essence, but the CDR is so good on her. It allows you, you know, just to spam your abilities. And that refunding 1%, 1.5% of your missing mana is a very, very big deal, right? She probably uses mana better than any other AD carry because she translates that directly into pushing power so well. So I think that she's really, really strong right now. And, you know, I did have her down in tier 2. I think I just ran into a couple of really bad Sivers. But especially, like I said, now that we're moving more towards a team fight meta, you're not going to get pressured as hard from the jungler early on. So you can more safely just AFK push them into tower. Is going to be really nice. So she applies a lot of lane pressure. Not that much kill threat. It's okay. Your boomerang does do a lot of damage. Pretty safe overall. Very nice scaling. And then pretty good reliability. I think a lot of people are switching over to Lethal Tempo rather than Fleet Footwork now. That's because people aren't getting double Zeal. So it had been common for a while to just go, you know, Infinity Edge, like Rapid Fire Cannon, Phantom Dancer. But now more and more people are realizing that the AD off of a double crit, double AD item is just tremendous on a lot of these crit champs. And once again, I've been saying to do that for a long time on Sivir, on Xayah, but a lot of people just weren't doing it. So now people are figuring it out. And then I still like Taste of Blood, Ghost Poro. You know, there is more of an argument for going Biscuits on her early just because she does need that mana, so you can still go Boots Biscuit on her. If you can get away with this will give you a lot of extra AD, though. That could be handy. You know, Relentless Hunter might not be that bad on her because you can clear waves so quickly. You could just very easily run over to a side lane, clear the wave really quick, and then rotate and get back to your team or just start clearing out the jungle or something if your jungler's not clearing the jungle. So I could definitely see going like Ghost Poro, Relentless Hunter on her. It could be really good. Relentless Hunter now gives you up to 55 out of combat movement speed, which is really, really good on a champion that can leverage that mobility, like Sivir, who can go push those side lanes. So actually, I kind of like that idea. The more I've talked about it here, I think Ghost Poro into Relentless Hunter would make a lot of sense on her. Now, you might need a little bit more lifesteal early on. If you do, you can go Taste of Blood, or you could go Ravenous Hunter, potentially, depending on how much you're going to get harassed. But if you have a healing support, if you have like a Soraka or a Sona, a Nami, even something that shields like a Lulu might be enough, because you shouldn't be taking a lot of bad trades early on. You know, like they shouldn't be trading with you at all, hardly. It's just going to be you pushing them into tower. So if you can get away with it, I think that Poro Relentless Hunter could be very good. Or once again, if you need it, you can go Boots Biscuit. But yeah, then just Essence Reaver, Phantom Dancer, Infinity Edge. Okay. So yeah, very strong there. Twitch is another one. Now, a lot of people don't rate Twitch as highly as I do. I think Twitch is extremely good in solo queue, and the main reason is he's invisible. Invisibility just is so strong because no one respects this in solo queue, particularly at, you know, if you're like silver and lower. Even at platinum and lower, I still think so many people don't buy control wards, and they don't respect when Twitch is invisible. You know, you can go roam to mid lane or something as Twitch if you see a really good kill opportunity, and mid laner's not going to respect that you're missing from bottom, and they're just going to spam ping the bot lane when Twitch rolls up and kills him. So he gets free kills off of that. He creates a lot of negativity and disruption on the enemy team. People start blaming each other for Twitch roaming around. So he can do that, but you don't even have to do that if you don't need to. If you can't find any good roams, you know, you can just show up to your own lane invisible and people are going to disrespect it. You know, they're just going to keep pushing into you. They're not going to know when you show up, and then you just roll up with a Lulu at your back, spam everything on the Twitch, and everybody's dead. So he scales extremely well with items. His early game is suspect, though. he doesn't have amazing wave clear. It's okay with his Venomous Cask, but he tears through a lot of mana if he has to keep using Cask and Contaminate to clear. He doesn't have a high mana pool or high base mana regen at all. So that could potentially be problematic if you just push him in a ton. So Draven can bully him, Sivir can push him in, Jinx can push him in. So that is kind of rough. But, you know, even if you fall like 20 CS behind in the laning phase, if you just don't die, then you can get some really good opportunities to get back into the game with that invisibility. It just takes a couple of kills, and you're right back in it. And so, yeah, Blade of the Ruined King can help you like get through a lot of the harass during the laning phase. And a lot of people do go Lethal Tempo on him, which is pretty good. But you know, you can get some lifesteal out of there. If you want to, you can go for the lifesteal rune, or you could even, if you had to, you could go fleet on him. You know, you really don't want to do that, though. Like, you really want to try to go lethal tempo. But you can go Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter if you want both of those. I still think that Ghost Poro is really good, so you could go Taste of Blood, Ghost Poro on him. But, yeah, he's got invisibility, which also gives him a lot of extra attack speed. And the big thing with this as well is you can just roll up to team fights and just sit there and chill for a few seconds, and then just wait until you see the enemy use their CC. So you can be in position, ready to go, but then they're not going to know, and so they won't hold their CC. So you'll see Vi, like, ult your tank or something. You'll see Nautilus, like, you know, ult your support or whatever. So you just chill, wait on them to use a couple of their cooldowns, and then just open up on them and delete everybody. So it just makes him really, really sneaky, really good at positioning, and he gets resets also. So if someone starts chasing you down after you kill the enemy team, you know, you get a couple of kills in there, you can use your Q again to get a reset, disappear, you know, wait until your Contaminate comes off cooldown or something, and then go back in again and go for another kill. So really good utility there. Excellent scaling. You know, this damage is 210% of your bonus AD with a 270 base, and it also ticks on them. Remember that whenever you use Contaminate, it does not consume the debuff. They keep taking this true damage over time, which is 30 true damage over 6 seconds. That's 180 true damage when this is fully stacked. That gets reset every time you auto-attack them. So that's a lot of extra damage. Think of true damage as basically double damage. So, you know, 180 true damage is about the equivalent of 360 AD. That's a really rough equivalency. It depends on how much armor they have, all that kind of stuff. But that's just a good rule of thumb to think of. It's just consider true damage double damage. So, yeah, it's really strong. And then, of course, his ult is on a low cooldown. Excellent at just completely mopping up enemy teams. It gives him tremendous range. 850 range is the largest of any AD carry. So, remember, you can stay in the back and do a lot of damage as Twitch. I see so many Twitches try to run up into melee combat and open up with spray and pray. It's like, no, bro, that is a mistake. Like, that Irelia will kill you if you open up in melee combat with her. So a lot of people do that because they want to greed out and say, well, if the person flashes, I still want to be in range to kill them with spray and pray. It's like, don't be greedy. You know, hang out in the back. If they flash, they flash. This is on a 90-second cooldown. Flash is on a 5-minute cooldown. So you will get a chance to kill them again when they don't have flash. So don't be greedy with this. Use the 850 range to your advantage. And then finally, with this as well, is like, especially in early levels, do not shoot through minions with this. I see so many Twitches try to open up and use their ult through a minion wave to try to kill people, and they do like 0 damage. And the way that this works is, yes, it gives you 20 bonus AD whenever you do this, but your damage gets reduced down to a minimum of 40% damage if you're firing through a minion wave. So, you know, if you have 100 AD to start with, right, you get 20 bonus AD off of this. It gives you 120. Great. Okay. So every auto attack, if you did not turn this on, would be 120 damage, which is great. But if you do turn it on, it's only going to be doing 40% of that, which is 48 damage. So instead of doing 100 damage, if you never turn this on, if you turn this on and fire through a minion wave, you're only doing 40 damage or 48 damage. So you're doing like half the damage. So you would have literally done more damage if you never used your ult. It's really goofy, but that's one of the things about this that people don't understand is you can actually do negative damage. You can do less damage than you would if you didn't turn it on at early stages in the game. You know, if you're hitting multiple enemy champions with this, yes, obviously it's going to be amazing because you're doing a ton of extra damage to multiple targets. But just be very, very cautious around minions. When you're super fed, it's not going to matter. You can fire through a couple of minions anyways later on in the game. But in the early game specifically, it's a big deal. And this can critically strike these extra shots, and they apply on-hit effects to everybody that's hit. So everybody gets hit with that Blade of the Ruined King, which is going to, you know, drain their health. It's going to, you know, do current health percentage damage to them, and it's going to heal you for a lot because it's going to trigger all of the lifesteal on every single hit. So he can build crit or he can build on-hit damage. So usually he goes for the best of both worlds. He goes for Blade of the Ruined King early, which does give him that extra little bit of sneakiness, so you can get up and use Blade on him so that they can't get away whenever you show up invisible and you're ulting. Now, once again, make sure it's safe to get close enough to use Blade of the Ruined King. Don't do it to like an Irelia or something, but if you want to do it to like an Ezreal, okay. So they can't get away. It also gives him some lifesteal to make it through the laning phase, and it scales very well with his ultimate, which, like we just talked about. Then after that, we do Hurricane. Hurricane applies Blade of the Ruined King to everybody that gets hit, and Spray and Pray applies Hurricane to everyone that gets hit. And Hurricane also, I believe, applies your poison to everybody that gets hit as well. I'm not 100% about that. Basic attacks. Adding 1 stack on hit. Okay, so it is on hit. So, yeah, it stacks Blade of the Ruined King on Hurricane. It stacks your poison early on. So if you're ulting into like 3 people and they're all lined up with your ult with Hurricane, then you're giving 2 Blade of the Ruined King hits every time this goes through, and you're stacking 2 stacks of poison every time this goes through as well. So, very, very powerful interaction there. And then you go Infinity Edge after that, because this can crit. Hurricane not only gives you those bolts which apply the on hit, but it also gives you critically strike, and each one of those bolts can crit as well. So once he gets Blade of the Ruined King plus Hurricane plus Infinity Edge, he's just going to completely delete entire teams during team fights. It's just an absurd amount of damage. But even at like 1, 2, and 3 items, he's very strong. Blade of the Ruined King, he can already start wrecking some people. Hurricane makes it even better, and then Infinity Edge just kind of puts it over the top. So I think he's really good. He has great team fight. He has the sneakiness of his invisibility to help him get back into the game. He has lots of steroids, just does a tremendous amount of damage, from the extra attack speed over here to the extra AD to the AoE damage with 850 range. He's just one of the best hyperscalers in the game. So you do need a little bit of protection with him. He's great when paired with something like a Janna or a Lulu that can give him extra stats and protect. So, you know, if you pick him with something like a Soraka or a Sona, that can be really rough. You're going to get camped and possibly murdered quite a bit if they have a lot of engage. But if you do have someone that can peel for him, he's awesome. And like I said, he's one of the best champions at coming back into the game if you fall behind, because you're going to get a lot of opportunities from that invisibility and from that really long range in team fights. So it's going to be tough for people to get to you. So very low lane pressure, low kill threat, but he is pretty safe. He can also go invisible and run away from ganks. Also, it's really hard to run him down. And then he has super high scaling and very high reliability. There's no skill shots with him. I guess if you count the cask as a skill shot, but there's pretty much no skill shots with him. It's just all about decision making and just figuring out when to go invisible, when not to go invisible. So that makes him extremely reliable, right? You're not going to get outplayed when you're Twitch most of the time, because you're just right-clicking people. So, and you don't have to make any fancy plays. You can just get a bunch of items, just choose when you want to open up, and just right-click and delete people. So I think that kind of the greedier build is Lethal Tempo, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then Taste of Blood and Ghost Poro. If you do need more sustain, you could potentially get Fleet if you had to, or you could get Biscuits early on if you feel like you need that, or you could substitute Ghost Poro for Ravenous Hunter if you wanted the double lifesteal, which may not be a terrible idea with him. And then just Berserker, Ruined King, Hurricane, and Infinity Edge. Okay, and then next up, Vayne. Now, I know that in the past tier list, people have been like, why is Vayne so low? Why is Vayne so low? Well, the meta's shifting around a little bit, and it's making it a bit harder on Vayne. So she can get bullied out a bit more in the early game now. So without that scuttle change, yeah, she was not very good at, trying to contest that scuttle either. But now the lane bullies don't have to worry about it, and they can just go all out on her early game. So like your Draven can go even more aggressive. Jinx, Sivir, all these champions can push you in or be much more aggressive with you because they don't have to fear the jungler as much as they did in the past. Now, tanks are coming back, and she is very, very good at killing tanks, like your Sejuani's and all that kind of stuff. So she's good at isolated kills on tanks, but at the same time, she does much lower overall damage in team fights than these other champions do. So that's kind of awkward. You know, if you're having a 5-on-5 team fight, Jinx, Sivir, Twitch, all of these are going to do way, way more damage than the Vayne does, unless the Vayne's just way more fed. So Vayne actually likes the skirmishing a lot more. She likes to be able to 1v1 isolate people, you know, run them down and just deal with those kinds of Clown Fiesta type of environments. And that's still there, but it's slowly shifting away from that. So she's good at killing the front line one-on-one, but she just doesn't have as much AoE. Now, she does still have her really good core build right now of Berserker and then Ruined King, Gensu, and Wit's End. That is probably going to get changed on the next patch. So they are nerfing Gensu's, or at least they're heavily talking about it, to where it's not going to trigger the on-hit effects until every third attack instead of every second attack. That's going to be a huge nerf to this build. We'll see if she still goes for it. But pretty much what it comes down to is I just feel like she has bad matchups right now against a lot of the other AD carries. Like, she was really good against Ezreal, and then she has recently been very good against Lucian, which seems kind of weird because Lucian should be good early on, but she just beats him so hard off a second item. Lucian, going Black Cleaver is so weak early on. And just a lot of these enchanters are just very aggressive, and they can harass you a lot in the laning phase. So it kind of depends on your support and sort of what's going on, but you definitely can get bullied out in the early game. And so she's still good. She's still tier 1. I just think that she just doesn't have as much team fight impact as other champs, and we're moving towards a bit more of a team fight meta. But she still has a lot of mobility. Jarvan is kind of rough for her as well, because if he dunks you, you can't really use your mobility that well. You can pin him into his own wall, which is kind of nice. You can knock him away if he's trying to flag and drag to you if he doesn't ult, but it's really hard to deal with a Hecarim who's going to ult on top of you. But, I mean, she can deal with it better than a Jinx. She can deal with it to an extent, maybe better than a Sivir, better than a Draven. So she does have that mobility. Just you have no lane pressure early, weaker in team fights, but still really good at skirmishing. So really low lane pressure overall, kill threat very low early on. Fairly safe, though. She has her pin, she has her rolls. She does scale really well. But then she's going to take press the attack, overheal, Alacrity, coup de grace, and then Ghost Poro and Ultimate Hunter. And then you still want to go Blather King, Gansus, and you can kind of choose after that. Some people go Phantom Dancer, some people go Quicksilver Sash or GA, depending on what you're up against. I think that Wit's End, if you're not sure, is a very good choice. It just adds a lot of extra damage off of Gansus, especially if you get it as your 4th item. So you're going to have higher levels, which means the Gansu on-hit damage is going to be even higher because it scales based on level. So I think overall she's pretty good. She's the most mobile of these champions. So she's probably the best do-it-yourself sort of champ out there. So if you're not sure about your support or their autofilled or something, Draven's really good at doing it himself too. But if you don't want to have to rely on a bunch of peel and you just want to peel yourself in position in team fights, then Vayne can be really good. If you have a bit more trust or, just a bit more faith in your enchanter supports, then I think that Jinx, Sivir, and Twitch will probably be better overall. Okay, tier 2. Miss Fortune, still going to be very strong. Now, she's not played a ton. At least I haven't seen her in my games very much this week. But I think that build is pretty good on her overall. The new build that's been running around lately, which is the Blather King into Ghostblade build. That build has a ton of mobility to it. You can get around the map really quickly with her strut. And in team fights, you can reposition a lot with your E to slow them down, your W to run away faster. You've got your Blather King to steal their speed. Ghostblade to move around faster. So just has a ton of movement, quite a bit of on-hit damage. She does apply a lot of pressure in the early game. So she kind of is an early game bully that transitions into a decent auto attacker later and a really strong team fighter with her ult. So that's kind of shored up a lot of her weaknesses. She had not really done a lot of sustained damage in the past. But this build does give her a bit more sustained damage. And the main thing about it is you get the 100 movement speed, which really allows you to run people down and reposition yourself. And you get 100% attack speed. And if you are triggering this love tap, if you're using your Qs or just changing targets in fights fairly often, then you can get this cooldown down quite a lot in the early game. So it's 12 seconds naturally, but every time you love tap different targets, then it goes down to 2 seconds per. So even if you only switch targets twice, that basically takes it down to an 8-second cooldown, and it's up for 4 seconds. So you're going to have this up minimum 50% of the time in a lot of fights. And this is what people have been kind of maxing. So usually people go 2 or 3 points and double up for the harassment in lane, and then they start maxing strut after that. That extra movement speed does allow you to position for bullet time as well. So she's really good in these 5-on-5 team fights. Bullet time just does a tremendous amount of damage. It has very does not interact really well with Blather King at all, which is why I thought that build was really troll. But the Blather King just gives you that extra single item power spike. The Q does apply Blade the Ruined King if it bounces over to somebody. But I think it's mostly just for a little bit of lifesteal early on, a little bit of extra pressure, and then just the active on that to do some burst damage and slow people down. And then once they're slowed, you can either run them down or you can drop a Make It Rain on them and ult them with bullet time. So it just gives you a lot more versatility. And it gives you some game against tanks as well, being able to take Blade the Ruined King. So she's still not going to be amazing against tanks with Blade and Lethal Tempo. She just does not have any other percentage damage in her kit. But overall, she's pretty solid. She's got some pretty good utility, like I said, with her movement speed, with her bullet time. So she's an okay choice. If you want someone who can bully early, be a pretty good team fighter later, and be a decent auto attacker later, then she's okay. So she applies a lot of lane pressure. I think she's 5. She's right up there with Draven. Not quite as much pressure as Draven, but pretty close. And then you have pretty good kill threat, and then safety, reliability, and scaling are just all kind of okay. Press the attack is really nice as well. That does make your Blade the Ruined King do more damage on hit, which is really handy. And then if you do get press the attack on somebody and you are able to channel your ult, then your ult's going to do 12% more damage as well, which is really nice. And then Taste of Blood and Ghost Poro, I think, are just excellent. You know, once again, you could go Relentless Hunter and go even harder on the movement speed, rotate around the map, you know, type of play style. But I think those runes are all right. And so, yeah, just Blade the Ruined King, Ghost Blade, and then Edge of Night is what I've seen recently to help protect her a little bit more. Okay. Kai'Sa. Now, Kai'Sa is kind of in a weird place right now because she's very good in pro, but she's not as good in solo queues. She has a fairly low win rate as far as AD carries go. I think she's at like 50%. She's the most popular AD carry by far at 34%. Ezreal's the next most popular, but she only has about a 50% win rate. Now, the main thing with Kai'Sa, I think, that's holding her back is her first item is really weak. Like, Storm Razor is not as good as Blade the Ruined King. It's not as good as Infinity Edge. Like, you just kind of have to get it just because you need the stats on it. You need your double evolve early on. But it just really does, like, it does not have a lot of synergy with her kit, like, at all. And your second item's going to be Gensu's most of the time, right? And so you're not even getting a, like, you have Fleet, which does interact with Storm Razor if you go Fleet instead of press the attack. And that does empower your energized Fleet footwork a little bit more. But you don't get a lot of other energized stuff for a while. You know, you're not going to get Rapid Fire Cannon until third item, if you get it at all. And so your Storm Razor is just really dinky. You know, it doesn't have, like, meaningful, consistent on-hit damage that can trigger with Gensu's. It doesn't have... So, yeah, it doesn't interact with Gensu's that well. You're not getting Rapid Fire to work with that well. So it's just really, really awkward. But her kit, of course, is really good. You know, you've got the outplay potential from her ult. You have your passive to do a good chunk of magic damage. Your W, you know, where you throw that... you know, purple shot at them does quite a bit of damage if you hit them with that. And then, of course, isolated missiles do an extreme amount of damage if you can get someone into a one-on-one situation. So just the raw value of her kit, just the pure power, does allow you to play her, even if her first item's pretty ridiculous. So I think that still makes her worth mentioning, but I only have her in tier 2 just because of the low win rate and just because she's so much weaker on single item and potentially even double item than a lot of other champs. Once she gets to 3, she's pretty good. And she's kind of like Vayne, where she's good at one-on-one, but she's not nearly as good at 5-on-5 team fights as something like at Twitch, a Jinx, or a Draven. She can get Hurricane, which can make her really strong in team fights later, sort of. But it's just kind of awkward. There are some builds where she will go Blade the Ruined King into Hurricane. I know some people were toying around with that build. That looks really good on paper, but it slows down your evolve quite a bit. So I think most people are going towards that Storm Razor after it got buffed. Yeah, and then you go Hurricane after that. So yeah, it's just kind of an awkward build. Some people are just rushing like straight Infinity Edge. Like you can do a bunch of different builds on her, but I do, you know, I kind of like the Infinity Edge, but the problem is like Gensu's is just like a must-buy item, and it just sucks with all of these other items that you get with it. It's okay with Hurricane. Yeah, I mean, if you're getting Gensu's, you really, really want to be getting something like Blade the Ruined King early. She just can't do it because you're going to miss out on, your attack speed evolve if you do that, or your AD evolve. One of them, you're missing out on it. I think you basically had to go double pickaxe, something like that. It was something like you had to go Blatherin King into double pickaxe to get your evolve, and then that slows down your Ginsu significantly. You can turn the second pickaxe into Infinity Edge eventually, but it just slowed down your evolve a lot, and I think people moved away from that build for that reason. So a lot of people are even going press the attack, which means you get like 0 extra bonuses out of this energized. You know, I guess you get every now and then you do get an extra 50 bonus magic damage, and it does slow people for a little bit longer. So she's okay. She has decent outplay potential. She's a pretty good one-on-one champ. I still think that Vayne, Kai'Sa's better in lane than Vayne is, but I think that Vayne is going to scale better than Kai'Sa in a lot of situations if you're playing Vayne correctly. So I would rather just play Vayne as the premier, like, single target champion. Even though, you know, Kai'Sa can get rune-ins later on, like I said, you know, later in the game, she does kind of transition to a multi-target fighter, but her team fight's just not going to be as good as Sivir, Twitch, or Jinx, and I would just rather have Vayne for these one-on-ones, particularly against some of these mega tanks that might start showing up. But she's okay. All right, Varus is another one where, you know, sometimes people critique me. You know, some people in the past have said, well, why do you have Varus so high? He's got a really low win rate right now. It's like, that's true, but his potential is really high. And we do see him in... we do see some potential for him. He's actually the most picked champ in the last little bit here. So MSI 2019. So he's the most picked champ in pro right now, and I think he is really good. Oh my God, Hecarim's like 9-1 top lane. So the potential is definitely there, and there are a couple of things that Varus has going for him that make him fairly unique from a lot of the other AD carries out there. First of all, he does have the engage, which is really strong, and it's not just like single target engage like Ashe, but it really disrupts team fights quite a lot because everyone has to spread out or they're going to get hit by multiple corruption chains. And if there's a bunch of CC going on in there, if you have a Sejuani or you have some kind of engaged tank in there, you've got your Rakan, you've got your Alistar, or whatever that's going in there, then sometimes it can be really hard to spread out. And if you don't spread out, then you're going to get binded, and it's going to continue to go on and on to other people. So it's just extremely disruptive in team fights. It's a pretty good single target damage ability. It gives them full stacks of blight, so it roots them so it's basically a 2-second stun, and you have 3 blight stacks on them, which when you explode those, you're going to do a ton of extra damage over time. I don't remember how much it is. It's 15% of their maximum health. So that's a really big hit if you think about they're taking 150 base. If they have 1,500 damage, and they're taking an additional, like 225 off of that. So that's like 375 damage at level 6, not including your auto attacks, and they're rooted for 2 seconds. So that's a hell of a lot of damage that he does. So he's got that. He has the team fight utility. He also does like really nice on-hit damage. So he does extra damage here. This 21, whenever you're applying blight to people, and then he has that execute ability as well. He has pretty decent wave clear, like with his charged up Q, decent sniping ability. He comes stock with some grievous wounds, so he doesn't have to buy as quickly something like Executioner's Calling because you have that to help you out a little bit. It's got some nice range as well, so you can use that to set up for ganks. It's got a decent little slow on it. Sets up your support to land skill shots or other people on your team to land skill shots. So it's got really good utility on it. And then with that on-hit build also, you get a lot of extra attack speed, 40% plus 30% of your bonus attack speed for 5 seconds. And then, of course, whenever you have Ginsus, it's going to be double procking your Blighted Quiver and all that kind of stuff. So he does quite a bit of, and he has 575 range. And especially if you're really proficient at abusing that range, you can get a lot of free harass in the laning phase. So he's got a lot going for him. He has good CC. He's got this debuff here. He has some long-range sniping capabilities. He does a lot of magic damage, which is really nice for a lot of teamfight compositions who might be running pretty heavy on AD. If you're running like an AD jungler and an AD top, having someone who at least does some magic damage is really helpful. And that's another reason that Kai'Sa is probably pretty popular in Pro, is because she does mixed damage as well, which is really handy. And as you can see, she's the third most popular one, although she's not winning as much. But he's just really good. I mean, that gives him a lot of utility, and his damage is pretty high. I think his damage is much higher than Ashe in a lot of situations. I think he has more utility than Ashe, and he has mixed damage. So I just think he's a better version of Ashe most of the time in fights. And so if you want that utility AD carry who has that engage, who can help out his team in a lot of different ways, and he's a pretty good option there. So why does he have such a low win rate? Well, you have to know how to use all those tools, right? You have to actually land your ult, which it is kind of tricky to land that. You have to itemize him correctly, and you have to be triggering those blight stacks. Like, I had someone who shall remain nameless, but you could probably guess his name, that I duo with sometimes, who's a good buddy of mine, and he is a diamond AD carry, loves playing Varus, but had not played in a while and just came back to the game, and we played a lot of games, and he was Varus, and he's like, oh, wait, there's an active on Varus's Blighted Quiver? I never knew that, right? That empowers his Q to do this extra damage. So that's someone who's a diamond AD carry that's, like, really good, you know, at the game. He'd just taken a break for a little bit, and he didn't realize that this had happened. So that's just, I'm just pointing that out just because he's complicated. I mean, he's got a lot of stuff going on, and figuring out how to use all this stuff correctly, it's really hard to optimize all of this, you know, to land the arrow, to know that this is actually here and when you should trigger this, to land those extra blighted stacks, you know, hitting the chain of corruption. There's a lot of stuff to Varus, and so he's not easy, and I think that that's part of why he's down low. Now, you might say, well, Draven's also not easy. Draven's even harder to play than Varus, and Draven has a higher win rate. That's true, but Draven's OP, and that's why Draven's higher on the tier list. But specifically, as you start moving up, you know, if you get into gold and platinum and things like that, Varus can be pretty good. I think he can be good at lower brackets too, but he is really, really nice if you have a coordinated team that can set up with his engages. So let's have him kind of average across the board. He's just pretty good at almost everything. And then you definitely want to do the on-hit build, though. So you want to go Lethal Tempo, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then Ghost Poro. I think Ulti Hunter, he's a great candidate for that because you should be able to get a kill every time your ult's off cooldown. Has a really long range. It'll catch people off guard. So I think that potentially makes him really powerful. And then, yeah, just Ruin King, Ginsu's, Hurricane, and then Wit's End might be a good, like, fourth item there. So, yeah, he's going to be strong. Do not do the one-shot, like the Lethal Tempo build. It's just too hard to make it work with the Qs. If you want to do something that does that much poke, just play Ezreal. Okay, play Ezreal or maybe Corki if you want to do that type of thing. So the on-hit Varus is way, way, way better right now than the lethality Varus. Okay. And I don't want to go too far over the time. I know we're already pretty far over. Kog'Maw, I was expecting him to be a lot stronger last patch. His win rate has gone up quite a bit, which is nice, but we still aren't seeing him that much as far as representation. And I think the major reason for this is he's just extremely unsafe against like a Hecarim or a Jarvan. If you do have a Lulu to help you out with the attacks and the peeling, or a Janna, that can be really nice. But there are other champs. I think the problem is Jinx is just better than him. Most of the time, Jinx does similar things. You know, he does do mixed damage. He does magic damage, so he has that going for him. And he is very good against tanks with his percentage health damage. But he just takes a little while to come online. He doesn't have great wave clear early on. His utility is extremely limited. I mean, he can occasionally ult someone to finish him off. It's all right. You know, he's got his little puke goo or whatever. His Q is borderline worthless a lot of the time. So he just doesn't have as much utility as like Jinx's Zap or Jinx's Chompers. Or like... And she puts out more damage earlier on off of less items than he does. So once Kog'Maw gets his Blade of the Ruined King and Hurricane, then he can start doing a lot of damage, but he also has to get Ginsu's. Whereas like Jinx, just right off of Infinity Edge, she's doing a ton of damage. And she gets Hurricane after that, she's doing even more damage. So I think that like her power curve is much smoother, and she has a much higher baseline power than he does. You know, he has huge windows of vulnerability too. If his W is on cooldown, he is extremely weak. He's very short range, and he does almost no damage if he doesn't have his W available, which is the thing that empowers his auto attack. Whereas Jinx, it's like her rockets are always available. There's no cooldown. She can go minigun to rockets anytime she wants, you know, and that's the issue, is she's always ready to go. She almost never has any downtime where it's like, wow, she's really vulnerable, let's get her. you know, in team fights. If her zap is on cooldown or her chompers, yeah, maybe you can kind of make a move on her, but she's always ready to snap on that DPS whenever she wants, right? And so I just think she's a bit more versatile than he is. She has more tools in her toolkit, especially early on. She also gets those free kills off of sniping, you know, with her ult that gets her going in the lane. And if she does get a kill or an assist, gives her a tremendous amount of mobility and rundown potential. So I just think that that's why Kog'Maw is not getting played a lot right now. I think that if Jinx was not in the game, then Kog'Maw would be much higher. I think he'd probably be tier 1. But the problem is he's competing with her for the same spot, and she's just better. Unless you specifically need some magic damage. So if your team is like 4 AD or something like that, and you need some magic damage, he's going to be one of your best magic options. But that's not happening as much lately. There are, you know, some decent AP options in every lane. So he's okay. I just think he's kind of a victim of circumstances here. Lucian has fallen down a lot. He has gotten completely murdered in terms of win rate, which has been pretty dramatic. I mean, he was the most OP AD carry probably like 4 or 5 patches ago. You know, he received a very minor nerf to his W, but a lot of it's just the meta has shifted away. It was really the changes to crit AD carries, which kind of doomed him. And the issue is his second item is very weak compared to a lot of other AD carries. So, you know, Black Cleaver's all right, but it's not nearly as much burst damage as, you know, a lot of other champions have, you know, in their kit, the Gensu users especially. So when they nerf Gensus on the next patch, Lucian, I expect him to go up, you know, probably at least 2 percentage points. Because right now he's just being squeezed out by all the Gensu users and the crit users. Now, some people are developing some technologies to help him out. So more and more people are starting to go Essence Reaver second and just drop in the Black Cleaver. It still gives you the 20% CDR, but now it gives you more AD and more crit. And then that builds much more smoothly into Infinity Edge as your third items. And you have 2 heavy AD, heavy crit items. And that gives him a lot more burst and a lot more value later on in the game. But a lot of people still go for the Blade of the Ruined King. It's just so nice with his kit first. And then you have to get those next 2 items. The problem is both those items are really expensive. So he can potentially get bullied out. Like, he has been a lane bully historically, but, like, Draven can definitely beat him up early. I think that Jinx can outrange him early. Sivir can push him in. He has a really hard time clearing waves without going out of mana in the early game. So I just think he has a lot of tough matchups, and he just does not scale as well later on in the game. He's okay with Enchantress. You know, he can use the Ardent Sensor, but, like, with Lulu, for example, he's not really going to leverage a lot of that extra attack speed very well because he's mostly ability-based. Sort of a combo AD carry. So he just doesn't play as well with a lot of the other popular supports as some of the other AD carries. Now, he is really mobile, and that is very handy against things like Jarvan, like Hecarim. He can get away from them. But overall, like, he's okay. I think that if you're a very good Lucian player and you really leverage your advantage early, he can be good. But like I said, I think that the meta has shifted away from him. So stay tuned for next patch when they nerf Gensus, like they're projecting to do. Then maybe we'll see him bump up just a little bit more. But right now, it's going to be rough for him. Okay, honorable mentions here, and then that's going to be it. We have Xayah. She's all right. You know, if you want to go for the Essence Reaver, Phantom Dancer, Infinity Edge, she's pretty good. Rakan did get a buff on this patch. He's feeling a lot better. So if you have a Rakan on your team, Xayah could definitely be someone worth considering. She does have pretty good wave clear, pretty good damage in team fights. Just takes her a little bit longer to come online. But she certainly can be good in the right situations. Caitlyn, if you're a Diamond Plus player and you really leverage your advantage early, Caitlyn could be amazing. She could even be all the way up near tier 1. But if the game goes late, you're probably going to get outscaled because she doesn't have any attack speed modifiers in her kit. She doesn't have any AD modifiers. So she just gets overwhelmed, right? She's not a good Gensu user. She's not a good Hurricane user. If you notice, almost all of these champions use either Gensus or Hurricane, with the exception of Sivir, who just, for the reasons I described, just her tremendous wave clear gives her a lot of extra power. So yeah, I mean, if you're taking towers super quickly, you're really leveraging your traps hard, and you know, you have a support that's helping you pressure, that's helping you take those plates and apply extra pressure, it's going to be nice. It's good that you don't have to go contest Scuttle anymore, so you can bully people out of lane. Just there are other bullies like Draven, like Misfortune, that are similar to Caitlyn that can apply that early pressure, but they have even more kill threat and they scale better later on into the game. So if you can end the game by 20 minutes, Caitlyn's going to be really good, but if you can't, if you're not applying enough pressure, then you're going to lose. So if you're playing Caitlyn, you better be up, you better get first tower, and you better be up 30 CS. And then you better run to mid lane and get that tower quickly, because you just never can fall behind. If your team just lightly throws, you know, they lose a team fight or they give up a key objective or something like that, it's really, really hard to get back into the game as Caitlyn. Or if you just get camped or something and you just can't apply as much pressure as you need to, because that Sejuani just will not get out of your lane, then you're probably going to lose. So it's just like, she's really good in, like, if you're really far ahead, but other than that, it's really rough. Okay, Tristana, I have people ask about Trist a lot. She's pretty weak in the early game. If you do get ahead, she can rocket jump in and secure a lot of kills, so she's very risky if you want to play her that way, but you can get some huge rewards. So if you have a nice all-in champ, you got a Leona or a Draven, or a Nautilus, something like that, then you can apply some extra pressure there. And she can also be really safe. You can use your rocket jump to jump away, get away from stuff. And she does have her ult to knock people back as well. So she has some stuff going on, but she requires multiple items. She's just not very good on single items. She's okay, but she's just not going to be as powerful as a lot of these other champs. She just doesn't have the same kind of tools in her kit that they do. So she's all right, but there are probably better choices. I know Jhin is becoming more popular, especially this like all Infinity Edge build that's kind of like the meme that some people are doing in Korea. Jhin does apply good early pressure, but the problem with going like lots of Infinity Edges is it's mega expensive. If you cannot afford that, you're going to fall really, really far behind. And he doesn't have a lot of tools to give him extra money. You know, he's not running Klepto. If you run Ghost Poro, you know, maybe you can get back in there. Like maybe he could go for a build. I think more people are doing Comet with Jhin with that build, but he could go for something like Dark Harvest or Halo Blades. I don't remember. I know they changed Halo Blades to where it wasn't as good on him, but maybe it's still okay. I don't remember how that interaction works. I think the first shot you don't get the bonus, but any future shots you do. But if you're doing that, you could actually go Ghost Poro and get Magical Footwear, which would give you some extra money. But yeah, people are still going Fleet. I don't think Fleet's good if you're going, unless you're going Rapid Fire second. Lethal Tempo is interesting. There's a couple of people doing Lethal Tempo, but yeah, a lot of people are still doing Fleet if they're going Rapid Fire. Some people are doing Lethality. But yeah, where are they going? Infinity, Rapid. Rapid first, then double Infinity. It's okay. I mean, Rapid is really good with Fleet because it makes your Fleet come up 25% faster, which is a good chunk of extra healing and mobility. So some people are trying the multiple Infinity Edges. I'm not a big believer in Jhin right now. I just don't think he scales enough. He's okay, but he has a huge problem with tanks as well. He's pretty good against squishy champs. Like in Assassin meta, he's one of the better AD carries because he can just turn around and one-shot the Assassin if he gets far enough ahead. So I guess if you're really like getting huge advantages, maybe you can play him, but I think he's really dangerous a lot of the time. And then Ashe, she's okay. Varus is just a better version of Ashe. If you're using Hawkshot really well, though, if you are getting some really good poke with the W, you're pressing the lane, you're landing every arrow, she can work, but she's just going to have a lot less damage output in the late game than a lot of these other champs. So you're paying a hell of a lot for that utility. And I'd just rather play Varus, because Varus is going to put out way more damage than she does under most circumstances later on, and he's going to have similar utility. I would say probably even more utility, just because he does have the Q to help trigger the blight stacks, and his ult not only hits one person, but can potentially spread and hit multiple targets and causes a lot of disruption in team fights. So she's okay, but I'd probably pick better choices. Okay, honorable mentions, then we'll end it. Ezreal's down here. I would not play Ezreal right now. I know it's kind of troll to put him down that low when he is like so popular and people can win on him. I just think that like nerfing that double tier build just feels really bad, and you're just going to get completely bulldozed in lane by a lot of these AD carries. Like you're probably going to be down 20 CS, and the thing is, yeah, you do have Klepto, but they're going to be taking your plates over time. Some of them can take Klepto too, like Draven. So I think that he's just not in a good spot at all. Like he's pretty much he's in this weird spot like where he's good in the mid game. So like once you get your Iceborne Gauntlet or Infinity Edge and you complete your Mana Mune, He's pretty strong right there. Like, once he gets that, then he can make some plays. He can get some kills. But he's really weak in the early game, and he's really weak in the late game. So, like, you're going to get mega outscaled in team fights by champions like Jinx, Twitch, Sivir, even Vayne. All of these champions are going to outscale you. So you have, like, this really weird power window where it's like, okay, this champion's super weak from 0 to 15. Then he's pretty strong from, like, 15 to 25. And then he's trash again at, like, 25 plus compared to a lot of other AD carries. Unless he's, like, 10 and 1 or something. So you're paying a super high price for his safety. And usually that means you're relying on other people to carry you. Now, if you have a lot of damage on your team, if you have like a Kindred, and then your top lane is like, a really experienced Riven or Fiora or something like that, and your mid lane's a Zoe, and the enemy team's just running a bunch of dive and assassins and stuff, yeah, maybe. If you just think, okay, I just need to survive, go even in CS as best I can, throw in a little bit of damage later on, but really, if I don't die, my team's probably just going to win, then yeah, he's the quintessential let me just chill and get carried type of champ. So he's okay for that. Kalista is still going to be pretty weak. If you do get ahead early, she can snowball hard, but a lot of the tanks did get nerfed with Aftershock on this patch. She's not that great with enchanters, so I expect her still not to be that strong. And then you have this other assortment of AP champs that are like okay in the right circumstances, but by and large, AD carries as a class are probably the strongest class right now. One of them, AD carries and junglers. I mean, if you look, most of the AD carries are at least 50% and higher. Now, I know that Ezreal and Lucian are very popular. That's 45% of the picks are those champs, and that's below 50%. But there are a lot of different AD carries that are fairly viable right now that have higher than a 50% win rate. I think more so than almost any other role. Supports, there are also a lot of supports that have pretty high win rates, but you see there's a decent chunk that are below. I guess most of them are at least at 50%. There's a decent chunk of supports that are below 50. I mean, beloved Volibear, everyone loves support Volibear. Somehow he's fallen below 50%, but maybe he'll get back up there someday. Or Poppy. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you all very much for tuning in. As always, I really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the rest of the content, the support tier list, the jungle tier list, and the patch notes I've released on this patch. I've also released some more topical guides recently, so I released a whole video about Ghost Poro, released a video about Alawi and Draven, I released a video about Sona and Taric. So I'm trying to do more and more of these kind of like spicy new things in the meta, just to help you understand what's going on and what's possible and whether or not you should be playing it. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.